He speaks, I think, of a house, Monsieur. The soft voiced sister of charity from the Roman Catholic mission spoke with a gentle detachment as she too looked down on the stricken man. A house? Well, he's got to get it out of his head, or we shan't put him through. It's on his mind. Segre, segre. The wandering attention was fixed, the eyes rested with recognition on the doctor's face. Look here, you're going to pull through. I'm going to pull you through. But we've got to stop worrying about this house. It can't run away, you know. So don't bother about looking for it now. All right, he seemed obedient. I suppose it can't very well run away if it's never been there at all. Of course not. The doctor laughed his cheery laugh. Now you'll be all right in no time. And with a boisterous bluntness of manner, he took his departure. Sagrav lay thinking. The fever had abated for a moment and he could think clearly and lucidly. He must find that house. For 10 years he had dreaded finding it. The thought that he might come upon it unawares had been his greatest horror, greatest terror. And then he remembered when his fears were quite lulled to rest, one day it had found him. He recalled clearly his first haunting terror and then his sudden, his exquisite relief, for after all, the house was empty. Quite empty and exquisitely peaceful. It was as he remembered it 10 years before. He had not forgotten. There was a huge black furniture van moving slowly away from the house. The last tenant, of course, moving out with his goods. He went up to the men in charge of the van and spoke to them. There was something rather sinister about that van. It was so very black. The horses were black too, with freely flowing manes and tails, and the men all wore black clothes and gloves. It all reminded him of something else, something that he couldn't remember. Yes, he had been quite right. The last tenant was moving out as his lease was up. The house was to stand empty for the present until the owner came back from abroad. And waking, he had been full of the peaceful beauty of the empty house. A month after that, he had received a letter from Macy. She wrote to him perseveringly once a month. In it, she told him that Allegra Kerr had died in the same home as her mother, and wasn't it dreadfully sad? Though, of course, a merciful release. It had really been very odd indeed. Coming after his dream like that, he didn't quite understand it all, but it was odd. And the worst of it was that he'd never been able to find the house since. Somehow he'd forgotten the way. The fever began to take hold of him once more. He tossed restlessly. Of course, he'd forgotten the house was on high ground. He must climb to get there. But it was hot work climbing cliffs, dreadfully hot, up, up, up. Oh, he had slipped. He must start again from the bottom, up, up, up. Days passed, weeks, he wasn't sure that years didn't go by and he was still climbing. Once he heard the doctor's voice, but he couldn't stop climbing to listen. Besides, the doctor would tell him to leave off looking for the house. He thought it was an ordinary house. He didn't know. He remembered suddenly that he must be calm, very calm. You couldn't find the house unless you were very calm. It was no use looking for the house in a hurry or being excited. If he could only keep calm. But it was so hot, hot. It was cold, yes, cold. These weren't cliffs. They were icebergs, jagged, cold icebergs. He was so tired he wouldn't go on looking. It was no good. Ah, here was a lane that was better than icebergs anyway. How pleasant and shady it was in the cool green lane, and even those trees, they were splendid. They were rather like what? He couldn't remember, but it didn't matter. Ah, here were flowers, all golden and blue. How lovely it all was, and how strangely familiar. Of course, he had been here before. There, through the trees, was the gleam of the house standing on the high ground. How beautiful it was! The green lane and the trees and the flowers were as nothing to the paramount, the all satisfying beauty of the house. He hastened his steps to think that he had never yet been inside. How unbelievably stupid of him, when he had the key in his pocket all the time, and of course, the beauty of the exterior was as nothing to the beauty that lay within, especially now that the owner had come back from abroad. He mounted the steps to the great door. Cruel, strong hands were dragging him back. They fought him, dragging him to and fro, backwards and forwards. The doctor was shaking him, roaring in his ear, "Hold on, man, you can. Don't let go, don't let go." His eyes were alight with the fierceness of one who sees an enemy. Segrev wondered who the enemy was. The black-robed nun was praying. That too was strange, and all he wanted was to be left alone, to go back to the house. For every minute the house was growing fainter. That, of course, was because the doctor was so strong. He wasn't strong enough to fight the doctor, if only he could. But stop. There was another way, the way dreams went in the moment of waking. No strength would stop them. They just flitted past. The doctor's hands wouldn't be able to hold him if he slipped, just slipped. Yes, that was the way. The white walls were visible once more. The doctor's voice was fainter. His hands were barely felt. He knew now how dreams laugh when they give you the slip. He was at the door of the house. The exquisite stillness was unbroken. He put the key in the lock and turned it. Just a moment he waited to realize to the full, the perfect, the ineffable, the all-satisfying completeness of joy. Then he passed over the threshold. So this is Agatha Christie at her best, a story writer instead of just a mystery bestseller. This is what, people suffered from in so many ways. I mean, this could all be secondary literature for the empire studies in history. Thank you for being with me.